Welcome to another episode of Artist Spotlight, the podcast. I'm your host, Mitch Stringer, and joining us is a wonderful photographer, Los Angeles based, who's photographed such legends as the Rolling Stones and B.B. King and Tom Petty, and the list just goes on and on. His work has appeared in music magazines and in all sorts of publications around the world. And I'm just really thrilled to have him. Before I introduce our very special guest, let me remind you that the podcast is brought to you, as always, by the Maryland Photography Alliance, where you can go online and check out everything they have happening in terms of contests and photo walks and just really good information that can help you enjoy the hobby and the profession that you're so committed to and so interested in. You can check that out at mdphotoalliance.org. And with that, I want to welcome photographer Jerome Brunet to the podcast.
Hello, Mitch. Honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here as well. I became aware of you a couple years ago through Instagram and have paid a lot of attention to your work. I mentioned before we started recording that I've been fortunate enough to purchase a couple of your prints and your phenomenal book, Into the Light, not only for myself but as a gift. And just for someone who has done some music photography, which I've shot a number of concerts, seeing your work, it really jumps off the page to me. It's that dramatic. And is that a skill that's honed, or you think that maybe your early education and fascination with music kind of gave you a bit of a leg up on being able to do that photographically?
So definitely, uh, you know, I actually started as a musician way before I was a photographer. My mom was a music teacher, and she got me started on the cello when I was 4. Played that for maybe 10 years. Then I heard Led Zeppelin, so then I went straight into guitar playing. And it just so happens that I did my schooling in Canada. I had a great high school, had great art classes, and one of them being a photography class, which I just sort of randomly took. And little did I know, the rest of my life was gonna be photography. But the two passions collided: music and photography. So that's basically how it started and continued on in college. Photography specific in Paris. Did 3 years there. I was at the time really enamored by all the Magnum agency, all the legends, Sketchy-Blisson, Kappa, etc. So I was really actually going to go, thought I was going to go down the documentary, you know, sort of path. Um, but I just happened to go to a blues festival in Paris, and the headliner was BB King. And I just had this crappy camera, but it was a camera nonetheless. And I sort of pushed my way into the press pit and took. I believe it's actually in the book. One of my very first photographs, and it was BB King. So little did I know that years later he was going to grace my book. But that's pretty much the path that I've taken. And yeah, so it's been a wonderful path, definitely.
So you start off playing the cello as a young kid, and then you realize I don't need all those cello groupies. I need to move to an instrument with much less groupies. So you move to guitar.
A little more chill, yeah. A little more
Yeah,
chill.
yeah, yeah. No, no, nobody, nobody plays guitar and meets the ladies that way, do they? Well, cello, yeah, I get that. So, you're playing some music, and then, if I'm correct, you played either in a band or at least you played out some guitar.
A little bit, yeah. We did a few bar gigs. Never really went anywhere, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, definitely.
My analogy is, when I grew up, I played baseball and played baseball in college, collected baseball cards. So I was this baseball kid. And then fast forward later on in life, I'm photographing Major League Baseball.
Mm.
So, and knowing what to anticipate, knowing what to focus on, no pun actually intended. So for you, having been a guitarist and also playing cello as well, here you are now in the big time as a photographer of those greats. So there had to be a couple, and maybe the first one was BB King, but a couple pinch me moments when you're like, this is surreal. Did you
Oh
have a
yeah,
few of those?
certainly. And it I still remember. Again, I was in Paris studying photography, and I went to a Peter Gabriel concert. Now I wasn't shooting it, but I remember watching a lady with a camera just calmly going up and down the photo pit. And I thought to myself, that is the coolest job ever. I want to do that. So that's kind of kind of the feeling that I had immediately when I saw somebody actually doing that. It's like, man, maybe I could try that.
Well,
So
yeah, and one of the things that I've noticed, in my sports analogy, and also, I see from your work as a professional music photographer, is it's one thing to have a camera and it's one thing to make a picture, but when you're seeing people that are at the absolute highest level in their field, even though I played baseball, when I see major league pitchers, it doesn't even look like the same sport I played. So when you played guitar, and I know that you still do that, and I'm sure it's
mm,
something that you still really, really enjoy. But when
of
you're
course.
that close to BB King, you
Mm.
have to be thinking that's a whole other thing that he's doing than what I do.
Oh, it's pure magic, pure
Yeah.
magic. Seeing these guys, I mean, it'd be, it's sticking with the guitar heroes. Seeing Santana, seeing Jeff Beck, Eric Clapton. It's literally, you could see the instrument is literally part of them. Billy Gibbons. I mean, just
Oh yeah.
watching Billy's left hand on the fretboard is just pure magic, and it's I'm in awe every time I'm in the pit seeing that. It's surreal, to see the greats doing it.
Yeah, I had the privilege of photographing ZZ Top several years ago, and it reminded me a bit of watching Stevie Ray Vaughan. And when I watched Stevie Ray Vaughan on one of those Austin City Lights concerts, and I thought he doesn't look like there's any thought going into what he's playing. It's
Pure
literally
channel.
going. It's
Yeah.
like he's channeling something.
Oh, it's pure channel. Yeah. Clapton had mentioned that about SRV, who I got to see when I was in high school, along with Jeff Beck. It's
Amazing.
literally, it's like an extension of the body. It's just that surreal. It's, as I said, like it's that channel going right through him. And as you rightly mentioned, he's not thinking. It's just
Yeah, yeah.
pure
It's
channeling. You don't
one
know
of
where
the
it comes from, but it's you know it when you see it, when you hear it, for sure.
yeah, it's magical.
Mm.
One of the things that I'll do for a minute is digress and kind of nerd out a little bit on camera related stuff. And
Mm.
where I'm going with that is I was having a conversation with somebody who wanted to buy a guitar for his son, and he said, "Oh, I want to get a really good guitar because my son is learning." And I said, "Wait a minute." I said, if you give Eric Clapton a guitar that you just bought at Walmart, it's going to sound like Eric Clapton. If you give a kid who's 6 months into guitar lessons Eric Clapton's guitar, it's going to
Mm.
sound like noise. So my analogy
Yeah.
is, and this is really for people, certainly who are listening, especially at the amateur level, is so much of what gets talked about is camera gear.
Mm.
And we all hear that term, a camera is a tool, and I think we kind of all agree that it is. But you know in terms of the priorities for someone who is an up and coming photographer,
Mm.
it's not even where do you rank the gear. Better to ask the question, where do you rank the skills that are advisable
Mm.
to become a more and more proficient photographer?
So, something that's often overlooked,
Yes.
is your background. It's more important to go visit galleries and and sculpture and painting and theater, than it is what make and model you're shooting. I can't tell you how many times I've been asked that, as if that's the priority, and that by doing so will get you to the level that it's taken me years of education and error. How many errors I've done to finally, it's just a path. I mean, I've been at it for almost 35 years, 40 years almost, since high school anyway. So it's yeah, it's a long, long path, and you're right to say that. Just because you bought a Strat doesn't mean you're going to sound like Hendrix.
Yeah. Doesn't
Yeah,
work that way.
no, no.
So in the shows that I've shot, I've with few exceptions, I've been part of the three songs and out club.
Mhm.
And we can kind of expand on that, but generally if you are not with the band, you have three songs and sometimes less, and then it's time to leave. And it's like an all out sprint if you are in that three song situation. And sometimes the photographers in the photo pit kind of work together. They kind of, in that, they choreograph it so you're not banging into each other. Sometimes people can have some sharp elbows. How's
Mhm.
that been for you, kind of navigating the photo pit when you're one of 5 to 10 to some bigger number?
Yeah, for the most part, it's been fairly respectable. I mean, we're all there. We all know that we're it's just three songs. It's what 10, 15 minutes max to try to capture the soul. I mean, I'd say probably 90% of what I shot that's in that book, Into the Light, was shot photo pass in the pit. Um, but I've always enjoyed that. I think I've kind of strive in that super high energy. It's a out of body experience. I
Mhm.
literally feel like I'm floating through. And again, you're respectful of the other photographers, but you're there to get the shot too. And so yeah, if a sharp elbow is needed, I certainly wouldn't hesitate.
Yeah.
Um, but again, I like shooting in that pressure, and I think it adds to the immediacy of the photograph somehow. Like the cover of the book, BB King, that was shot in the first three songs. Little did I know that was going to become it's a photograph that literally has taken a life of its own. It's been published internationally, it won awards. I mean, to the point where people are getting it tattooed, and it's in South America, like people I've never met. It's crazy. But again, under pressure, first three songs. So yeah,
One of the
it's
one
go
of the
ahead, go ahead.
things that so impresses me with your work is that you've been able to really capture the personality of that artist in the images that I've seen. And again, when I've shot these shows and you've got the three songs and out, very often the artist comes out and they've got that big song and everybody kind of gets crazy. But sometimes it's not until songs 4 through something else that the jacket comes off, the shirt flies open, because it's just they're not really sweating.
The beat of sweat that comes down. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for you to have had a fair majority of the images that are in the book in those first three songs, I mean, to me, having shot concerts, it's super impressive because you've been able to capture those moments with people kind of just in the full out performance mode. And one question I have is, for every phenomenal picture, how many pictures do you have of that same artist with the microphone uncomfortably in front of their face? Because that's like the bane, I think, of the concert shooter's existence.
Yeah, I'm certainly guilty. I have a few of those. I think I'm almost at a million shots now, live shots
Wow.
of concerts. So I'm sure a couple in there.
Yeah, gotta be, right?
But with shooting that much, you also learn to positioning yourself
Yeah.
to get less of those annoying shots, and to really concentrate on you just get a sense of what works best, obviously.
Sure, sure. Well, and like like sports, like music, with you having done this for the time you've done it, and I know that I've heard you say before that you really only, if not certainly, prefer to shoot the artists that you like. So you
And
have
I
an
love
aware.
to be specific that
Okay,
I love.
yeah, yeah. And so you have an awareness of their music. So when that first
Correct.
song comes, you kind of know how you certainly know how the song goes, but I feel like you can maybe better position yourself because you know what's coming more so than someone who may not be as familiar with the artist they're shooting.
Sure. I mean, it's a simple things like knowing 12-bar blues, knowing those three chords when the five hits. You,
Mhm.
you usually kind of know when a solo might hit, when the artist may be a little bit more visually might strike a pose potentially by you just hear it. I For me it's in my DNA. It's just the music flows through me. Um, I'm definitely, I would say, 80 to 90% uh, concentrating on visuals, and maybe 10% of the of music is being filtered through.
Mhm.
But it's just timing. Again, having all those years practicing music, it's you learn timing. It's yeah, I think a really important tool to have as a music photographer. So
A lot of people, myself included, when I leave a concert, generally you're talking with whomever you went with in the car, and you can't hear each other that well because you just left this concert, even if you have some kind of earplugs. So, maybe for the listeners, you can describe kind of what the bass or the guitar kind of feels like coming out of those speakers when you're in
mhm.
that photo spot, kind of just the physiological reaction that your body's
uh,
going through.
so I've been through a few crazy ones. The first one that comes to mind was Motorhead at a festival. Um, and I rarely wore earplugs in the pit until I shot Motorhead. Down in the pit, out they come. It's a wall of marshals, of course. He strikes maybe two, three chords. I shoot literally two, three shots, and it's just I could feel my ears bleeding. So I ran out of the photo pit to the first aid, got some plugs, and ran back in. So yeah, it can be quite violent at that distance because you're you know 8 feet away from those speakers, and then big festivals. Sometimes, a lot of times, the base cabs. These are base cabs that are 6, 7 feet tall.
Mm.
Just and they're made for crowds of 50,000, crazy crowds, and we're right up against them as the photographers. So if you don't have at least earplugs, you're in for a world of hurt. So yeah, it's a very important thing to have earplugs.
And I know you've told this story before, but I think for listeners who haven't heard it, there was a point early on when you were doing law enforcement ride-alongs, and
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah,
were seeing drug busts and autopsies, and
yeah,
you talk about a journey, as the
yeah,
term is
yeah.
often used. So
Yeah.
how did you even get into shooting those kind of things, and then later on segue to the things you do now?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was a huge fan of the Magna photographers. One of them being Leonard Freed, who did this incredible multi-year documentary on the cops in New York, but in the late '70s, early '80s, when it was really sketchy police work, if you can call it that. But the incredible photography. There's a book out called I think just Police. Highly recommended. Anyway, so highly influenced by him, and I just happened to be in Texas, El Paso area, and ran into a canine unit. And I just thought, well, I had a few months to kill, so I was like, why don't I try my hand at that myself? And 7 months later, I came out with this documentary on right on the border of Juarez and El Paso. Just again, super sketchy area. So yeah, the largest single heroin seizure. Just brutal murders, rapes, you name it. I saw it. I was pretty, luckily I'm pretty thick skinned, but it was incredible experience, to say the least. Yeah.
Well,
And that
I
sort of,
think
yeah. Good.
I think of work, people like Jill Friedman in New York
Mhm.
City, and she
Sure.
would go out and she would photograph these crime scenes, with, literally bodies are
Yeah.
laying right there. And,
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was dramatic stuff.
Yeah, I remember, for example, pulling up to it was what they call a floater, something that was in the Rio Grande. They had just fished them out,
Mm.
and it was the sun was going down. There was the guy's covered in flies, and we pull up, and I'm with my camera, and I could feel the flies coming off the body onto me as I was shooting. It was just like the kind of thing that doesn't matter how powerful the shot is. That feeling that you're, is Yeah, it was really really an incredible experience.
It's like
Uh,
something out of like a Ouija book, and
yeah,
his
yeah,
stuff that he
yeah.
shot. Well, you live in a city that I was fortunate to live in for 3 years. I lived in the Wilshire La Brea area,
Yeah, sure.
and I really loved old Hollywood.
Hmm.
And when I was there, just to give you context, was late 90s. And so a lot of these areas that were old Hollywood were kind of run down. They were being in some cases knocked down, in some cases just dilapidated. But I loved that. I loved just walking around, the remainder of old Hollywood, and I would even photograph areas that were well past their heyday, and you could almost look at a before and after of what it was and what it then was when I was shooting it. So, my question is, living where you do with entertainment, being so prevalent, and for that matter, going to school in Paris. What does a city do for you as a photographer in terms of just the energy of it?
Yeah, so I've been super lucky. You mentioned Paris. I was in the Bay Area for almost 15 years before in LA. So being in these incredibly musical locations is obviously a huge benefit. I mean, I literally don't have to go anywhere. A lot of people ask, so you go do tours with people, and I'm like, well, I don't really have to because everybody comes here.
Yeah.
So all the literally every style and certainly my style of music, which is blues, rock, and soul for the most part. Everybody comes through here, so yeah, I like to have that pulse instead of being in a really sort of sleepy town that would suck and have to drive to wherever nearest town is.
I was fortunate to talk with and become friends with the photographer Michael Zagaris, who's up
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the San
sure.
Francisco area.
Yeah.
And he was shooting the music scene in the whole Haight Ashbury
Sure.
area, the
Yeah,
Fillmore and all
yeah.
those legendary shows. And
I have his Who shot right behind me there.
okay, yeah,
Private
yeah, yeah,
picture of the band. Yeah,
yeah, and just
love his work.
to hear about that whole area, it's just remarkable. For me, where I am in Baltimore, I get up to New York City, and so I'll go into places like the Bitter End and some of the other places in the Village, and you're literally in the front row or third row, and it's just these great venues to
Mhm.
bring a camera, and with a 50,
Mhm.
you're as close as you need to be.
Yeah, exactly.
um, I guess one thing that I kind of wish for, and the type of music that you really enjoy makes me think about it even more. Back in the day when you could smoke at these venues and you had these
Right.
legendary photos, with John Coltrane and
Yeah,
others, and the
yeah,
smoke and the light. I mean,
incredible.
while yes, that's not super healthy, but what amazing photography.
It's visually, it certainly helped. Oh, it's like all the sports photographers from the
Yep.
'70s that the color, that sort of yellow orangey hue,
Yep.
made those images even more striking. Thanks to all the chain smokers and cigars.
And
Can't
boxing.
bel Yeah, yeah. I couldn't imagine being a professional, whatever pitcher or whatever basketball player, and having to work in that environment must have been crazy.
Yeah, I mean, what it does with the light is just amazing.
Yeah,
One of the pictures that I really love of yours is a stage view, a back view of Dave Navarro,
oh
and
yeah,
then it's looking out over this massive crowd, and I don't know whether that was a Jane's Addiction thing or a Chili
yeah.
Peppers or whatever.
Jane's Addiction at Bottle Rock, the very first Bottle Rock festival in Napa.
Okay,
And I had incredible access. I was the main stage photographer for that, and that particular shot was shot where they had two video cameras stationed, which is it was not completely off the above the photo pit basically, and where I was able to almost shoot almost behind them from the front of the stage. It was kind of a rarity. So yeah, thank you for pointing that one out. That was a
yeah,
lot of fun.
it's just a great picture, and what it I guess begs is the question about when you're a photographer, and I'm going to stick with your genre in music, but it's very, I'll use the word easy or obvious to be in front of the stage and photograph the lead singer. Okay, that makes lots of sense. But the picture that you shot of Dave Navarro, you're behind him, and certainly everybody's not going to have that kind of access. But what kind of suggestions would you give somebody who's an amateur photographer? They love music, that they're able to bring a camera to a venue. What would be some suggestions about what to shoot that's not just the lead singer singing out to the crowd?
Mhm. Uh, get to go to small clubs. Get to meet the musicians. Talk to them. When you befriend the musician and you photograph him, regardless if it's backstage or front, whatever, you'll shoot differently than you would if it's a complete stranger. You feel there's more of a connection right off the bat. So yeah, try to befriend the band, befriend the management, the people that run the venue, etc. And then yeah, with a little bit of luck, you can get access backstage, and then you start getting interesting, watching, taking pictures like Zagaros did backstage, shooting Pete Townsend tuning up his guitar. Jim Marshall, legendary, iconic rock photographer, incredible work backstage. Just people hanging out. Jimi Hendrix hanging out with Janis Joplin. So backstage, of course, and then being able to shoot on the stage left or right, and right behind the band. That's always amazing. One of my favorites would be Tedeschi Trucks band. To sit behind those two drum kits is probably one of the greatest musical sounds I've ever heard in my life. It's just incredible, and then visually, of course, it's a wonderful spot. So, yeah, try to find new angles. But at the end of the day, I mean, I go back to Jim Marshall. Is one of his most famous pictures is a picture in the photo pit shooting upwards, and it's Jimi Hendrix arms out, but it's one of the most iconic photographs in rock. It was, I think it was a sound check, so there's it wasn't high energy. I take it, but the photograph, I have it on my wall, is just so striking. So there is no bad spot. It's just what just have you captured the soul? That's all that
Well,
matters.
and one of the things that I've mentioned to young photographers, a lot of times when I'm shooting Major League Baseball, you get interns and others who are in college and they're interning at the ball club, and they also may be on the campus newspaper, and maybe there's a fairly decent sized band that's performing on campus, and I'll talk to them about close-ups of the guitar player's hands. If they're playing a solo, and maybe they've got some interesting tattoos or rings on their hands, and they're playing the guitar, and just those kind of elements. It could be the belt buckle of a dancer or a
Yeah.
singer, or just there's things that I think are there, especially if you're not limited to three songs and you have that
Mhm.
luxury of time to kind
Mhm.
of soak in everything that's on that stage. I
Yeah.
think there's lots of pictures that can be made other than just the lead singer.
Of course, of course. Yeah, I don't have a lot of those, but one that comes to mind is the close up of Buddy Guy of his hand while he was playing the Strat, and it's a really powerful shot. That I haven't shot enough of, quite honestly. Another route is slowing down your shutter speed. Do some the movement of the artist, the movement of a guitar, movement of a hand. Yeah, it's endless. It's like musical notes. How
It,
far do you bend it? How much
it,
space do you put between the notes, etc.
there's a photograph of a musician that I have to admit that I do not know his music specifically, but I think it's an example of, if you have access, it could be at a fair, it could be at a small club, it could be at a bar. but you can get portraits of a performer that are so dramatic and frankly beautiful. And the one of yours that I'm talking about specifically is Pine Top Perkins.
Yeah,
That
my favorite shot.
photo, that photo is, I mean, I honestly, I think it's a breathtaking picture.
Thank you so much. It's by far my favorite shot I've ever taken.
Really?
Shot, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Back shot backstage, Santa Cruz Blues Festival, which I shot for quite a few years. It was my one of my favorite festivals. Um, it was like family to shoot that. Anyway, there he was by himself, sitting backstage at a table, and I just sort of slowly sat down right in front of him, introduced myself. He couldn't have been more of a gentleman. He was in mid 90s.
Wow.
Just had lit up a smoke, so I joined him for a smoke, and he just goes into this story about when he was a kid, and he would go get a pack of cigarettes for his grandmother, and then his grandmother would give him a couple of smokes.
Oh
it's,
God, that's
it's just
great.
it was just an incredible moment, and then I asked him, would you mind if I take a couple pictures? He said, of course. So I shot him. I was, like 3 4 feet away. I was literally across the table. Yeah, and it just everything just landed perfectly. The composition, if you look at it, it's like an X that goes through it, so your eye just constantly goes. Obviously, it's very shallow depth of field, so your eye stays on the face and the history in that face.
Oh
He's the
yeah.
pianist for Muddy Waters, of course, legendary blues musician. It was just, yeah, one of those moments that once in a lifetime experience. Thought on that one for sure.
I mean, I felt like I was seeing a picture of like Robert Johnson or something, you know? I mean,
Pretty much, yeah.
you know what I mean though? It was just
Oh,
it's an impactful photo.
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's good. It's hard to top that one.
Well, and you know what though, I think that my point a little bit earlier, and we'll give listeners certainly your website and all that, so they can take a look and see exactly what we're talking about. And actually, when we promote the episode, we'll show that photo so people can see it. But
Yeah.
I think if you are, let's say you're a person and in your local community there is a fair. It's a bluegrass fair. It's an event. It's local, and you have local bands that are playing. They don't have to be famous musicians or anything like that, but they can be musicians who've been playing out or in the area for decades. Those kind of photos, a different person obviously, but those kind of photos where you can have a conversation and people appreciate your interest in them. They appreciate
Of
you
course.
being there at the event. I think those type of photos are available. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, absolutely, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are always fun. Like when I'm just, I'll pick up my M, just with a 50 mil, um, and not bog myself down with, the usual kit. A real pleasure. So it's very, so it's a relaxing, and then you just use your ear and you know immediately, who has it. And that's what I very quickly get attracted to,
Yeah.
people that have it in their soul, real musicians. Yeah.
So when I know I'll get this question, so it's a question for you. The question is, when you get ready to photograph a show, you mentioned gear and what you're going to grab. What do you grab when you're going to shoot a show? You've got first three songs, and whether and maybe differentiate. If you're shooting first three songs, what are you bringing? And if you're the photographer for the festival, you're hired by the venue, you'll be there for 3 days or something like that. What are you bringing in terms of bodies and lens combinations to get the kind of images you want?
So for the most part, uh, actually for quite a while, I was shooting one like top of the line Nikon body with three lenses in the case, and I would swap the lenses out. Now this was I really enjoyed not having bodies flying around my neck. I like to have just one really powerful camera in my hand, and then swap the lenses. But as you could imagine, it wears out the rings on the lenses. So then I moved over to the second camera. And for the most part, it's just two classic lenses: 24-70 2.8, 70-200
Okay.
2.8. So those are the two main ones. If necessary, having the 14-24 2.8 again Nikkor as in the bag should I need to go super wide, which is fairly rare. So that's, I mean, I literally just moved over to a full mirrorless kit. I've been shooting digital since 2006. Before that, why don't I just start from the beginning? First camera, FM2 Nikon, 50 mil. That was really for my high school camera. Even through college, that was pretty much my main camera, 50 mil, 1.8, I believe it was. And then I actually landed my first Leica M6 with actually the first one was a 50 mil Summicron. So yeah, 50 was definitely the important lens for me. I was a huge Henry Cartier-Bresson fan who lived just a block away from me. I got to meet him.
Oh,
Um,
wow. That's
he was
cool.
97. Yeah, I shook his hand. It was just in it. He was literally right next to my apartment in Paris, looking at through a store window, and there he was, this older gentleman. I was taken aback. I was like, "There's no way is that him?" So I slowly approached him, told him that, yeah, I'm a young photographer studying in Paris, and shaking his head, going, "Good." And he points down at my camera. He goes, "Good to see you have your camera with you. Thank you so much." And I asked him, "Would you mind, Monsieur Bresson? Je peux prendre une photo de vous? Can I take a picture of you?" And he's notably shy. He was notably camera shy, so he said no. To this day, my biggest regret was not asking him, "Would you take a picture of me?"
Oh,
Could you imagine
yeah.
to have a negative of Cartier-Bresson? So yeah, just an incredible meeting that was. Uh, Suffice to say, so yeah, those were the college years, and then I've always shot Nikon and Leica. Um, then the digital, so yeah, I moved to digital 2006. Started off, I think, at the time as Nikon D2X, whatever the flagships. I
Mhm.
did flagship all the way through to D5. And just recently moved over to the Z8s, a pair of Z8s, mirrorless cameras, and just swapped out the same lenses, the 14-24, 24-70, 72-8, 7200 2.8 Z lenses. And yeah, so I have no choice. I've already sold off all the older gear, so I'm stuck with. They're great cameras, don't get me wrong, but it's the technology has gone so far. It's about removing, quite honestly, a lot of the options that these cameras have. It's just there's so many things, and so
Oh, yeah.
it's trying to dial back all the like it does. You can toast your bread with it. You can
Do your
you,
taxes.
you do your taxes, all sorts. So yeah, it's really making it as simple as possible to get the job done. But so yeah, and then when it comes to like currently the M10P
Okay.
with a 50 Summilux.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty much what's in the bag, and I'll take pretty much everything. I got a cool roller bag. My after many years of carrying a shoulder bag, I've finally gotten the roller bag.
You've given
Old
in,
man,
huh?
old man roller bag, which is a wonderful thing to have.
Oh, yeah.
I'm finally realizing. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, two bodies, three lenses. Well, actually, it's three bodies with the Leica, and yeah, so that's pretty much it. And then if I need to shoot soundboard shoots, so that would be just for in the photo pit or festivals. That's what I would grab. And then if I need to shoot from the soundboard, which is rare, and I'm really not a big fan of shooting that way, but some artists like Eric Clapton, for example, Bruce Springsteen, Aretha Franklin, those are the ones that come to mind. Insist that the photographer shoot from the soundboard, which is a fair distance further from the photo pit, and then
Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and rent 600
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
suitable for the gig, and that's pretty much it. I mean, for me, less is more. the less I can have, where I can, so I can really concentrate on the artist. The better it is, I think.
So this very short story will set up a question for you. So I'm shooting a college football game. University of Maryland is playing West Virginia. It's a big game in this area, and I'm on the sidelines, and the one of the teams is marching down the field, and a booster comes up to me in the middle of the game. This is not a timeout. The game is going on, and says, excuse me, I see that you have a really nice camera, and I just bought this camera yesterday. I'd like to get some pictures of the game. Can you show me how to get it set up? Meanwhile, it's like, second down and 5, and the game is going on. And I'm thinking, you never know who you're talking to. So, you got to
Yeah,
be polite, but you got to be quick.
sure,
So I
sure.
took a look at the camera, and I put the dial on the square green icon, which is full auto.
Yeah,
I said,
yeah.
"Here you go, enjoy the game." But
Press,
the analogy is about knowing your equipment. And
sure.
and when you've got 9 to 11 minutes, first 3 songs, to
Right, right.
get what you want to get, maybe you can talk to how incredibly important it is to know your gear and what it can do and how to use it in a given situation.
Oh, for sure. To follow with your story, I had a guy one time. It was a festival. He comes up to me with a Nikon F3 with a motor drive on it, and asked me how do I rewind the film. And I just happened to have shot a F3, so I know that it's a two thumb, very quick two thumb procedure on the rear of the motor drive. And what it does is that it sets the motor drive to rewind the camera. And then I go back to, he thanks me, and I go back to shooting the thing. He comes back to me a few minutes later. The thing's still spinning in reverse. He didn't realize you have to actually stop it. Right? So he had been sitting there with the F3 just spinning away for the whole time I was shooting. Thought that was hilarious. Yeah, that's the only time that's ever. I was mildly shocked when that I even had the wherewithal to. Anyway, so yes, of course, to know your gear, and to make as many of the mistakes as possible with said gear, because just like this new gear that I have here, I mean, there's because it's technically very different from a manual camera. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, like you press the wrong button, boom, it switches over to a different thing, and you'd even realize it because you're in the dark, of course. Um, so yeah, it's I'm constantly learning how to work the gear, just to get the bloody shot.
Mm.
The latest is the autofocus technology, which has gone. It's, it's just on a different planet. It's 3D tracking, follows the eyeball. It's
Yep.
just so it's wild, but it's a lot to digest all at once, and there's a lot of things that can you can give you error because of it's so technically advanced. So yeah, definitely try to learn as much as possible and make as many mistakes as quickly as possible to yeah.
Yeah. Get up that learning curve.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I have is, you have shot some of these incredibly iconic performers, and certainly all those forms of music, with jazz and blues, they're not going anywhere. Those are here to stay, and you have new artists who are emerging in those fields. So with you having shot who you have shot, how do you sort of follow the up and coming artists so that you can have sort of like the next, if you will, the next generation of those kind of artists in those genres you enjoy to explore, like the next BB King, the next, whoever that may be, or
Yeah.
do you really have it honed in more like on, the Gary Clarks of the world, and those kind of folks, and that's kind of where you're living photographically?
Um, I almost from the word go, I insisted on shooting the greatest musicians that were available at the time, and I'm still I still follow that ethos, but There's not much left, quite honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, it's there's some great bands that are the like Tedeschi Trucks band, for example, is a great example of the next generation keeping it alive, and in it's such a powerful way. But it's really a different time. Like when you compare it, it's how good the music was back in the 60s and 70s, and now it's just a trickle of the past in many ways. So it's um, I have faith that the music is such a powerful tool that I don't think it's going anywhere. It's just the quality of it. Um, it's not certainly not as abundant as it
Hmm.
was in the past. In my view, I don't know, I'm certainly I'm old school when it comes to the blues, of course. Anybody that can play the blues correctly is good in my books. But it's not a given. It's not a
Yeah.
given. It's because
It's
of the simplicity. It's just three chords, and it's how you play it. If you actually live the blues. But there's wonderful stuff out there, and there's new kids coming out. That it's not auto tuned. It's not they actually tune their own fucking guitar.
yeah, yeah.
And
They
it's
learn it. They understand it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Now,
that's
I
I admire.
I mentioned your prints and the ones that I have. Now, do you do your own printing or do you outsource your printing?
Yeah. So I did all my own printing up to 17 by 22,
Okay.
and then after that, just outsource. Yeah,
Yeah, and printing is a whole other thing. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a rabbit hole that you can go down based on whether it's color, it's black and white, it's high contrast, it's more of a traditional contrast, and um, it's really there's a lot to it. Other than the size of the print, which makes sense that you're only going to do up to a certain size. Was there a thought process in terms of what paper you decided on, what printer you decided on, what inks you decided on, or was it just like, yeah, that works, it looks great, and I'll leave it there? Or was it really a whole thought process for you?
I had the enormous luck of having one of the best printers in the business as a teacher when I was in Paris. Berthomé was his name, and he was a printer for many, but most importantly for Henry Cartier-Bresson.
Mm.
And I'll just say one quick story that he had told me. I spent probably as much time shooting shit with him in the dark room. Well, not just outside the dark room, getting stories from him than I did learning. The main thing that I learned in the dark room was get the shot in camera. Try to get the best exposure. That by doing so, you'll spend a lot less time in the dark room. That was one of the first things I learned. So get the shot in camera, perfectly exposed, close to as possible. Anyway, so the story that they pulled out was he was working at a famous print shop called Picto in Paris, and Catullus would come in, whatever, every couple of weeks and get his prints done. And once one round, there was like I don't know 10 prints, and Bresson went, all right, do this to this one, and went down the line of the prints of what do you want to change. And just out of the blue, just to sort of test them out, my teacher decided to do exactly what he said, except for one print. And that one print, when Bresson came in to check all the prints, he was like, "Yeah, perfect, perfect, perfect." And he stopped at that one print and went, "I saw this one last week," and went on. These are good. So that's how attuned he was, of a photographer. He could literally just within a second, he's like, "I saw this last week." Thought that was
That,
an amazing story from a printer.
that
To
reminds
test
me.
out like the goat of photographers.
Oh yeah,
Compare.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It reminds me of a
uh,
story of the baseball player Ted Williams. He went to the bat factory and they delivered a shipment of bats to him, and he went down the line holding each bat. And he said, "Well, they're all fine except this one because this one is a little bit heavy." And they said, "Ted, they're all weighed and everything else." And he said, "No, it's heavy." And they reweighed it, and sure enough, it was like a fraction of an ounce or something
wow. Yeah.
heavier because the great ones know you know
No,
that
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that's why they are the great ones. So just to
Yeah.
turn the page, and I think I actually meant that pun, so to turn the page to your book, into the light. I had a book published about a year and a half ago on my Cuba photography, and I know how important for me the editor was that I worked with. She was actually Los Angeles based, as you are, and for me, I had about 50% more images picked out initially than what we ended up with in the book. And I knew going in that we would have a cut down from, the total number based on all sorts of factors. So my question is, in your book, uh, did you start off with more and you got down to the number? Did you work with an editor, or did you kind of just manage that process yourself?
Yeah, so that was 100% done by myself.
Okay.
A
Wow, that's impressive.
huge mountain that was. It
Mm-hmm.
took me almost 6 months, I think, total, for everything. I had no art director. I had no. I based the layout on Sebastião Salgado's Workers book.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're familiar with that one,
I
so
am.
a lot of double trucks. But yeah, that was pretty much one of my for me it's like one of my favorite books, photo books ever put out. And then when it came to the selection, the editing, obviously throughout the years, you edit each show that you go to from whatever, a couple thousand down to 20 shots, so you already kind of know the ones that work best. Obviously the ones that I've sold, it's a good sign.
Sure.
And then how to lay them out. I think I kind of did it chronologically, along with um, the type of music. It'd be more, hard rock or more bluesy. And I tried to, yeah, more sort of lay it out as a song, as music, putting pauses every once in a while. So it was, yeah, it's just sort of a natural thing but as I said, it took a long time, and it was very, at the beginning, I was like, man, can I even do this by myself?
It's an undertaking for
Oh, it's
sure.
huge, huge undertaking. But so happy that I did that, because it's really, it's one thing to give somebody a business card, or send a thumbnail email. It's another thing altogether to drop a 4 pound book in somebody's lap and go, this is what I do. So it's
Oh
opened up
yeah.
a lot of doors, and yeah, it's highly recommended to anybody who hasn't put out a book to do so.
Yeah, it's yeah. I've had a similar experience. Just it's very impactful.
Mm.
I know that I saw on social media that your gallery show, I guess, opening the other night, you had a guitarist there,
Yeah, good friend.
and what led me down this thought is I think that, at least as an outsider, it seems like you do a phenomenal and a consistent job of marketing.
Mhm.
And I guess in your line of work with, selling prints and books and working to photograph bands, it seems like it is a 24/7, 365. You're always marketing. Is that
Mhm.
kind of how that goes?
I think it's a necessary evil. I mean, there's so much content out there, that, out of sight, out of mind. So if you're not, constantly showing, if not new, good work,
Mhm.
you know, um, yeah, it's a necessary evil. I try to post, maybe one shot a day, across platforms. Yeah, I try to keep it consistent. Again, I'm a one man band, so
Mhm.
it's, I have to do that. I think it's an important thing to do. My grandfather on my father's side was a wine salesman, so I think I have a bit of his BS, you know, his chutch, as we say, his the way you speak to people, uh, sort of salesmanish.
Yeah.
I don't, you know what I mean. But it's an important thing to do. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So
we're visualists, and we have to speak with our images. So it's, what better platform than, whatever, Instagram, etc.
who's out there now that you haven't photographed that you'd really like to?
But let's see who's left on the Guitar Heroes. Brian May, I've yet to shoot.
Okay.
Love to shoot Brian. Yeah. Um, well, one big thing for me is I just had a daughter last couple of years, so that's really been a huge change for me, and sort of your priorities kind of change
Mm-hmm.
once you have a kid. So that's kind of been my main concentration for the last few years. But now that she's walking and talking, so I could sort of slowly go back into my professional photography. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Yeah, in a really
Yeah,
good spot.
I was messaging back and forth with a guy named Stevie DeCaney, who's a guitarist for the rock band Buck Cherry, and
Mm,
he was a guy who a Leica shooter, and he would
mm,
bring his camera when they were touring all around, and whoever, especially if they're in a festival situation, he would shoot the bands that were
mm.
playing around him and
Oh,
everything else, and I said to him, "You still carrying that Leica on the road?" And he's like,
mm.
"Nope, got a son, keeping an eye on my son, taking him to little league, writing songs, but not really shooting anymore."
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's life. It's life.
It
That's
is.
how
It
that
is.
goes, right?
Indeed. Yeah, that's a wonderful
Now, I know
thing.
that people who are listening are going to want to, not only look at your website and see some of those names of the artists that we've been talking about that you've created these incredible portraits of. So, where's the best place for people to get online and see what you have going on?
Well, my website, it's my full name, jeromebrunet.com, JeromeBrunet.com. And then same handle for Instagram, Jerome Brunet. Uh, yeah, those are two main spots.
That sounds good. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And, I know I said it a few times, but I'm very sincere. Your work is really remarkable. And I feel very fortunate to have two prints and probably more down the road on my wall. So thank
Well,
you, Jerome, for being on the show.
thank you, Mitch, so much for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Of course, you're very welcome. And I want to remind all of our listeners that we have brand new episodes on the 1st and the 15th of every month. So definitely check those out. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. That way they get delivered right to your phone or wherever you listen to your podcasts so you don't miss one. We always appreciate you liking and following and letting friends know. It helps us get the word out. And so until the next episode, I wish you great light. I wish you great shooting, and we'll talk again soon.